Welcome to Old Molson, the original border town that is nestled on the northern side of the U.S. just before Canada, where in its heyday people would come down here on their horses and they'd come through the highway that comes down from British Columbia through Molson, and you would hit Molson before you hit U.S. Customs. So it would be very important that people passing through here report to U.S. Customs, or the regime will take you down like Nixon.
Molson was started in 1898 by the Molson Company with were the investors, and then a man by the name of Meacham was the promoter. And they came here because there was of the mining interest in the Poland China mine, and so they started the old Molson and built the hotel there, a 3-story hotel, and spent about 60 to 70,000 on different buildings. There was I think a drugstore and a store building and different things, and they that mine went on. But in 1901, then they had a disagreement, and the Molsons withdrew their money, and then Meacham went to Texas, and then so Old Molson then just became only about 12 people there in 1901. But the area then opened for homesteading in 1900. So then people started coming in, and then they started building the railroad through, and well, about 1905. So then Molson began to grow, and so then, then the homesteader by the name of McDonald then filed on a homestead near the old Molson site and claimed then all the businesses in Old Molson as part of his homestead. So then there was a legal fight, but since they couldn't get have title to their, or clear title to any buildings they might put in, nobody wanted to put a new business in at Old Molson. So that's when they taught this Noah Lacoste at the Old Molson site to plat 40 acres at the new Molson site, and that's when the buildings, they began building new buildings there, the hotels and different businesses. And so then there was a fight then between the old and the new of who would have, like the post office especially. New Molson wanted the post office, but it was at Old Molson. So this one fellow took the postmaster's examination and passed it. So when the other guy was out to lunch at Old Molson, they came and took everything out and moved it to New Molson. So, well, this was the bank that the fellow built that was on skids. He couldn't get a title to any land there, so he built the building and put it on the skids in the streets, and then he could just pull it around wherever he wanted to do business. But that didn't last too long. Then they probably moved over to the new Molson. And that was in 1914, and by then there were a lot of, and the little school that they had south of the town here of Molson just was not large enough, and the one-room schoolhouses that were in the surrounding districts wanted a place where they could send their high school students and things. So in 1914, then the two towns did get together and build this school building in what's called Central Molson. It's between the old Molson and the new Molson, and the family by the name of Pratt platted this part of Molson, and so it became known as Pratt Center Addition. And the school then was built, and 1915, then they had their first, it was the first class then, and then it operated with 12 grades until 1962, when the high school then went to Oroville, and then they had the first 6 grades here until 1969. Yes, the enrollment did go down. There was with the high school, the state required that you have at least 30 students in high school to have a school, accredited school, and we didn't have that many in the 4 grades. It was in the 20, 25. So they went to court and tried to declare it remote necessary, which there were some schools in the state that were that because of the grade coming up and different things. They even went to the Supreme Court to try to get that. But in the meantime, then they did improve that upper grade, and then too, the state was providing more money for transportation, and so then it was more logical to transport them to Oroville than to try to keep the school here. So it was a combination of things, and so then it was kind of the same thing with when they closed the grade school. The Oroville school, they were getting ready to start in the fall of '69, and they didn't have enough teachers, and they had a new superintendent, and he could look at this and see how expensive it was to provide education for a student here, and where they could be bused to Oroville and filtered in, and they hired the teachers, the janitor, the cook, everything went to work then for the Oroville School District. So that was the end of the Molson School.
No.
Well, the students, of course, were bused to Oroville, and the building was sold to the Grange for a minimum amount, but the Grange didn't really have a use for it, and so it just sat vacant and deteriorated until 1980. Then the assessor assessed it by size and brick, and so the Grange had to figure out what they would do with it because they couldn't afford the taxes. So, and in the meantime, there were some of the, Harry Shirley had gathered up some artifacts and things that were over in a store cafe just north of here, and they were wanting to close that and use it for their own residents. So it seemed the logical thing to open this as a museum. But the roof had leaked so badly that it took a lot of renovation to get it ready. But in 1980, we started and fixed the roof, and then worked on this grade school level, the classrooms and the bathrooms, and were able to open the museum for viewing in 1982. And we had a school reunion at that time. So then we've just steadily, then it took about 6 years then to get the basement, which was a gym, and then the high school, all renovated and ready for viewing.
I stand here at Sidley, BC from 1895 to 1912. Richard G. Sidley, territorial police and customs collector, settled here in 1889. He started an international town general store, saloon, livery barn, and blacksmith shop. He served as postmaster and kept an eye out for the horse thieves, and my guess, mad cows. Don't forget those mad cows. They usually, if you piss them off, they get mad. Dominion Day was, in other words, Canada Day, July 1st, was celebrated here by everyone. Some said the boundary line did not make much difference in those days, but those were those days. Now, in the days of high increased security, I imagine the boundary line makes every bit of difference. But times have changed, no doubt, and bootlegging tightened it up about 1916. Porter Brothers lumber mill straddled the U.S.-Canadian boundary. Wonder if they had to deal with the timber tariffs and subsidy complaints coming from the U.S. side of the border. Last to close was the post office, September 30th, 1912. Sidley was well liked and settled many early day disputes. He died here in 1922. And of course, the boundary line did not make much difference in those days. Times have changed where you've got helicopter speedboats and routine patrols much up and down roads just like this.